The base auditorium was packed. Rows of officers in pressed uniforms filled the seats, medals catching the overhead lights. The atmosphere carried the usual mix of discipline and quiet competition that followed joint command briefings. Conversations were low, controlled, but charged. At the front stood Admiral Grant Walker, a decorated SEAL commander, 25 years of service, multiple combat citations, a man used to being the highest authority in any room he entered. He adjusted the microphone casually, glancing at the digital briefing screen behind him. The presentation had just concluded: operational updates, leadership restructuring, command rotations. Before we dismiss, Walker said smoothly, we've got a new transfer joining oversight. A few heads turned toward the side entrance. She stepped in quietly. Commander Elena Ross. Her uniform was clean but simple. No dramatic display of decorations. No theatrical entrance. She carried a slim folder under her arm and walked with calm, measured steps toward the front. Some officers exchanged glances. She looked younger than most senior commanders present. Walker watched her approach with mild curiosity, and something else. Amusement. This is Commander Ross, he announced. Apparently here to observe our little operation. A faint ripple of restrained laughter moved through the room. She stopped beside him and offered a professional nod. Admiral. Her voice was steady. Walker leaned slightly closer to the microphone. Commander, he said lightly, eyes scanning her shoulder insignia. You look a bit understated for oversight. A few more quiet chuckles. She didn't react. Out of curiosity, he continued, tone playful but edged, what exactly is your rank in this chain? The room went still. It wasn't a direct challenge, not openly. But it carried a message. Prove it. Elena met his gaze without blinking. My assignment details were transmitted to your secure system this morning, Admiral. Walker smiled thinly. Humor me. A long pause. Officers in the front row shifted slightly. This wasn't standard protocol. Rank inquiries were rarely made in public, especially not like this. Elena placed the folder calmly on the podium. My rank is sufficient for my role, she replied evenly. A few brows raised. Walker gave a soft laugh. Sufficient, he repeated. That's not usually how we do things here. He turned slightly toward the audience. In the SEAL community, he added, we're pretty transparent about authority. The implication hung in the air. Elena remained composed. Authority is transparent, Admiral. Assumptions are not. The room grew quieter. Walker's smile thinned further, not anger yet, but irritation. He tapped the podium lightly. Well, until clarified, you'll operate within my command structure. She tilted her head slightly. Respectfully, that won't be necessary. That did it. A faint murmur rippled across the auditorium. Walker's posture straightened. Excuse me. Elena's expression didn't change. My orders do not place me under your operational command. The air felt heavier now. Walker folded his arms. And whose command would that be? Another pause. Elena glanced briefly at the large digital operations screen mounted on the wall behind them. The base-wide system interface displayed live operational data, personnel logs, and secure notifications. Then she looked back at him. You'll be notified shortly. The words were calm, certain. Walker let out a short laugh. Notified. Before he could continue, a sharp electronic tone interrupted the room. Every officer's wrist device buzzed at the same time. Simultaneously, the large screen behind them flickered. A secure alert banner appeared across the top. Priority command update, effective immediately. The room froze. Walker turned slowly toward the screen. The text began scrolling. Admiral Grant Walker, temporary suspension of command authority pending investigation. Silence. Absolute silence. Walker's face didn't change at first, as if his mind refused to process it. Then more text appeared. Operational oversight transferred. Acting authority assigned to Commander Elena Ross. A collective breath left the room. Someone in the back whispered, "What?" Walker stepped back from the podium, eyes locked on the screen. "This is a mistake," he said quietly. Elena didn't move. The screen continued. Formal arrest directive authorized by Naval High Command. Military police en route. The auditorium doors opened. 2 uniformed officers entered, not aggressively, not dramatically. Just with quiet certainty. Walker looked at Elena slowly. "You knew." Her voice remained steady. "I was informed this morning." He studied her face, searching for satisfaction, for arrogance, for something. He found none. I asked for transparency, he said softly. And you received it, she replied. The military police stopped beside him respectfully. Admiral Walker, sir. The title sounded different now. Walker removed his cover slowly, glancing once more at the screen, then at the room full of officers who had laughed moments earlier. No one was laughing now. Elena stepped forward calmly and addressed the auditorium. Effective immediately, we will continue operations under revised command protocols. Her tone wasn't triumphant. It was professional, controlled. As Walker was escorted out, the echo of his earlier joke lingered in the silent room. He had asked for her rank. Minutes later, the entire base had learned it. The auditorium doors closed behind Admiral Walker with a heavy finality. For a moment, no one moved. Dozens of decorated officers sat frozen in their seats, eyes shifting between the large digital screen and the woman now standing alone at the podium. Commander Elena Ross. No, acting authority. The title had changed everything. The massive display behind her still glowed with the official directive from Naval High Command. The language was precise, legal, unmistakable. Command authority transferred effective immediately. A quiet tension rippled through the room. These were seasoned officers, combat veterans, strategic leaders, but none of them had ever witnessed a live suspension like this. Not in the middle of a briefing. Not broadcast base-wide. Elena reached forward and calmly muted the alert tone still blinking on the screen. Then she turned back to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, she began evenly, I'm aware this is unexpected. That was an understatement. A captain in the second row stood slowly. Ma'am, with respect, are we to understand that Admiral Walker has been formally relieved? Yes, she replied without hesitation. Pending investigation under article review. Details are classified above your current clearance. The words weren't harsh, but they were firm. Another officer spoke up. And you're assuming full command of this installation. Elena met his gaze steadily. Operational oversight and authority, effective immediately. A subtle shift passed through the room. Tone, posture, recognition. One of the senior SEAL commanders leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. This wasn't about humiliation anymore. This wasn't about a joke gone wrong. This was structural, planned. The captain cleared his throat. Ma'am, may we ask how long this transfer was scheduled? Elena stepped away from the podium, walking calmly across the stage. Contingency protocols were drafted 3 weeks ago, she said. Authorization finalized at 0600 this morning. Murmurs followed. That meant High Command had been monitoring something significant. The senior SEAL commander finally stood. Ma'am, he said respectfully, Admiral Walker has led this base for 6 years. His record is extensive, she finished for him. And respected. Her interruption wasn't dismissive. It was controlled. But leadership accountability applies at every level, she continued. Rank does not exempt responsibility. The room absorbed that. Elena tapped the control tablet on the podium. The main screen shifted from the suspension notice to a series of encrypted operational files. Redacted reports, financial transfers, authorization overrides. The atmosphere changed instantly. This investigation does not concern battlefield performance, she clarified. It concerns procedural violations and unauthorized operational decisions. Silence deepened. The implications were serious. She turned to face them fully now. I did not come here to embarrass anyone, she said calmly. I came here to ensure this installation remains compliant, operational, and intact. Her eyes swept across the rows, not challengingly, but confidently. Earlier, some of these same officers had smirked when Walker questioned her rank. Now no one dared. A lieutenant in the back spoke carefully. Ma'am, was today's briefing intentionally structured to test response? Elena paused briefly. Yes. The honesty hit hard. I needed to observe command culture under unscripted pressure, she continued. Chain of respect. Reaction to perceived authority gaps. A few officers shifted uncomfortably. They understood now. Walker's public challenge hadn't just been arrogance. It had been evidence. The senior SEAL commander gave a slow nod. You allowed him to push. Yes. And you knew the arrest order was already authorized. Yes. Another heavy silence. She hadn't retaliated. She had documented. The captain lowered his voice. Ma'am, why not inform him privately? Elena's expression remained unreadable. Because the breach in protocol was not private. That landed hard. The room wasn't angry anymore. It was recalibrating. Elena stepped forward again, voice steady but stronger now. This installation remains operational. There will be no disruption to mission readiness. However, effective immediately, all command decisions will route through my office for review. She tapped the tablet again. New directives appeared. Oversight revisions. Audit protocols. Chain of command restructuring. Precise. Ordered. Controlled. One by one, officers straightened in their seats. This wasn't chaos. It was transition. The senior SEAL commander gave a sharp nod and stood at attention. "Ma'am," he said clearly, "this unit stands ready under your command." The gesture shifted the energy of the entire room. Others followed. Chairs scraped softly as officers rose. Elena watched them, not with pride, not with vindication, but with measured acceptance. The earlier laughter from Walker's joke felt distant now. Irrelevant. Authority had never required volume. Only legitimacy. She gave a single nod. "Return to your divisions. Updated command briefings will be distributed within the hour." The officers began filing out, quieter than before, more deliberate. As the auditorium emptied, Elena remained at the front for a moment. The massive screen behind her now displayed only one line. Command integrity restored. Outside, military police vehicles moved across the base perimeter. Inside, something else had shifted. Respect. Not forced. Not demanded. Confirmed. And this time, no one needed to ask her rank. Night settled over the base like a quiet reckoning. The bright chaos of the afternoon had faded into controlled stillness. Patrol lights swept across hangars. Engines hummed in distant maintenance bays. Somewhere beyond the perimeter fence, waves struck the shoreline in steady rhythm. Inside command operations, the atmosphere was different. Focused. Measured. Commander Elena Ross, now officially acting authority, stood before the main operations table, reviewing live feeds from 3 deployment zones. The glow of digital maps reflected faintly across her calm expression. No applause had followed the arrest. No celebration. Only responsibility. A communications officer approached carefully. "Ma'am, High Command has acknowledged transition confirmation. They're requesting a readiness assessment within the hour." "Understood," she replied without looking up. "Forward current fleet status and personnel readiness metrics. No redactions." "Yes, ma'am." Around the room, officers worked with renewed precision. The earlier uncertainty had transformed into quiet efficiency. Word of Admiral Walker's suspension had spread across the installation, but speculation was minimal. The directive had been clear. Chain of command was intact. A knock sounded at the glass door. The senior SEAL commander entered, posture formal. "Ma'am, Commander Hayes," she acknowledged. He stepped closer to the operations table. "The teams are requesting clarity. There's concern about morale impact from the arrest," she asked evenly. "Yes, ma'am." Elena nodded slightly. "That's expected." Hayes studied her carefully. "With respect, ma'am, you handled the transition publicly. Some are questioning whether that was necessary." She finally looked at him. It was. A pause. Walker challenged authority in an operational environment, she continued calmly. "In front of subordinates. That establishes precedent." Hayes considered that. "If I corrected him privately," she said, "the culture remains unchanged. Public accountability resets it." He gave a slow nod. "You're reinforcing structural discipline." "Yes." Outside the operations room, footsteps echoed. 2 junior officers walked past, whispering quietly, no longer mocking, no longer skeptical. "Curious. Alert." Hayes lowered his voice. "There are those who underestimated you today." Elena allowed the faintest hint of acknowledgement. "That was part of the assessment. You let it happen." "Yes." The realization settled between them. Walker's joke hadn't been spontaneous chaos. It had been observed behavior. Hayes straightened. "Then what's the next move, ma'am?" Elena tapped the table display. Satellite imagery expanded across the screen, an offshore deployment zone currently under Walker's previous oversight. "Operational review of all active directives issued in the last 90 days, she said. "Audit everything. That will shake the structure." "Good." Her voice wasn't harsh. It was decisive. A young lieutenant hurried into the room. "Ma'am, media inquiries are beginning to surface about the command suspension." Elena didn't hesitate. "Release standard statement. Personnel matter under review. Base operations unaffected. No additional commentary." "Yes, ma'am." The lieutenant left quickly. Hayes folded his hands behind his back. "You're not concerned about backlash?" Alina's gaze shifted briefly toward the darkened window overlooking the runway. Leadership isn't about comfort, she said quietly. It's about stability. For a moment, silence settled again. Then the main display chimed softly. Incoming encrypted transmission. High command. Elena stepped forward and accepted the call. The holographic seal of naval authority appeared midair. Commander Ross, the voice on the secure line began, status report. Transition complete, she replied evenly. Installation secure. Operational readiness unaffected. Command integrity restored. A short pause on the other end. Any resistance? No, sir. Another pause. Assessment of personnel response. Corrective but cooperative. The voice softened slightly. You handled the exposure efficiently. It wasn't exposure, she corrected gently. It was correction. A faint acknowledgement came through the line. You will remain acting authority until formal review concludes. Understood. The transmission ended. Hayes watched her carefully. Temporary. For now. He nodded. Outside, a convoy vehicle moved across the far edge of the base perimeter, likely transporting Walker to processing. The irony lingered quietly in the air. Hours earlier, he had stood at a podium, confident, amused, asking her to declare her rank publicly. Now the system had declared it for him. Hayes spoke again. There's something else, ma'am. Yes, the younger officers, they're talking. About how you didn't react emotionally. Not when he challenged you. Elena returned her focus to the operations display. Authority doesn't require reaction, she said. It requires timing. Hayes gave a subtle smile. Understood, ma'am. He turned to leave but paused at the door. For what it's worth, he added, you didn't just take command today. She raised an eyebrow slightly. You redefined it. He exited. Alone again in the glow of digital command screens, Elena stood quietly. The weight of the day pressed in, not dramatic, not overwhelming, but real. Power wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was responsibility carried without hesitation. Across the base, officers adjusted to new reporting lines. Directives updated. Systems recalibrated. The chain of command had shifted. Not because someone demanded respect, but because it was proven. And somewhere in a holding facility miles away, an admiral likely replayed a single moment in his mind. A simple question. What's your rank? Now the entire installation knew the answer. Not because she announced it, but because she didn't need to.